My name is Aria Torres. I'm 26 years old, and for the past 3 years I've worked as a sales associate at Evre Luxe Jewelry, a high-end boutique tucked between designer flagships in Manhattan's Upper East Side. From the outside, it looks like a dream job. Glass displays filled with flawless diamonds, polished wood floors, velvet-lined trays, and classical music floating through the air like perfume. But if you peeled back the velvet and gold, you'd find something less glamorous: cutthroat competition, whispered rumors, and a manager who ruled like she wore a crown no one could touch. Diane Russo, mid-40s, impeccably dressed, and the kind of woman who could smile at you while slicing your career off at the knees. She'd been the store manager for 8 years and had a reputation for mentoring rising associates until they got too close to shining. Then suddenly their hours dropped, their clients were mysteriously reassigned, and their performance reviews dipped just enough to stall promotions. I had watched it happen to 2 women before me, and now I was the latest target. Diane didn't like me because I didn't play the game the way she wanted. I refused to fawn, gossip, or pretend that our clients were only worth something based on their outfit or handbag. She called it lacking polish. I called it basic respect. Today started like any other: a tight bun, a steamed uniform blouse, and a mental pep talk in the mirror of the staff bathroom. Smile, stay sharp, don't let her see you break. By 10:80 a.m., the sales floor was already bustling. One of the newer girls had just latched onto a couple from Long Island looking at engagement rings. Another was chatting with a hedge fund wife over champagne. I was quietly restocking the Emerald collection, listening for opportunity. That's when I saw her. She stepped through the glass door slowly, her posture upright despite her age. Maybe early 70s? She wore a simple oatmeal-colored coat, slightly worn at the edges, and shoes that had seen better winters. No makeup, no jewelry. She might have been mistaken for someone looking for the restroom, or maybe just trying to get warm. No one moved to greet her. The floor manager barely looked up from her clipboard. I didn't hesitate. "Good morning," I said warmly, stepping forward. "Welcome to Evre Luxe. Can I offer you some tea or water?" The woman blinked up at me, startled. Her face softened almost immediately. "Tea would be lovely, thank you." I led her to one of the private viewing tables and returned with a tray. Green tea in porcelain, 2 sugar cubes on the side. She thanked me again, carefully removing her gloves. Her fingers were slender, the nails trimmed short but neat. "What brings you in today?" I asked. She smiled. "A bit of everything, I suppose. I lost my favorite necklace a few weeks ago. It was a gift from my husband, God rest him. I've been thinking it might be time to find something new." "I'm so sorry for your loss," I said, instinctively lowering my voice. She gave a tiny nod. "He passed 4 years ago, but sometimes grief circles back in unexpected ways, doesn't it?" "It does. More than I can explain." But I just nodded. "Let's find something special for you." For the next 30 minutes, I showed her different pieces: a modest sapphire pendant, a vintage cameo, a freshwater pearl strand that made her eyes light up. She asked thoughtful questions. Not once did she brag about her wealth or name-drop designers. She asked me about my favorite gemstone, what I liked working here, and where I grew up. We talked like people, like equals. And then, just as I was beginning to wrap the tray of options to store away, she paused. "Actually," she said, reaching into her worn handbag, "I'll take these 3. She pointed to the pearl strand, a diamond locket, and an Art Deco bracelet. "And I'd like 2 of each. 1 set for me, and 1 for my granddaughter. Graduation's coming." I blinked. "Of course," I stammered. "Yes, absolutely. I'll prepare everything now. Would you like them wrapped individually or as a set?" As a set, she said, sipping her tea. It's a celebration. It took me a minute to process the total. Over $90,000. Just as I started the invoice, I heard the sharp click of heels. Diane. She materialized beside me, that syrupy smile already stretched across her face. Oh, I see you've been helping one of our VIP clients, she said smoothly. I'll just step in to finalize everything. My stomach dropped. I turned toward the woman. This is our store manager, Diane. The older woman tilted her head slightly, her smile cooler now. I was enjoying working with Arya, actually. Of course, Diane chirped. Arya's one of our top associates. She'll assist while I process the order. And just like that, I watched my name slide off the sales slip. I'd seen this move before. Pretend it's teamwork, pretend it's leadership. Then pocket the commission, the credit, and the promotion points. But this time, something in me hardened. As I watched Diane escort the woman toward the private checkout lounge, chatting about building legacy through jewelry, I didn't feel defeated. I felt determined. Because I knew this wasn't the first time she'd done it. And now, I was going to prove it. The rest of that day moved in a fog. I went through the motions, smiling, straightening displays, giving the usual compliments. But I wasn't there. Not fully. My mind stayed in that moment at the checkout lounge, watching Diane fake charm and leadership, watching her absorb my sale like it was owed to her. It wasn't just the money. Yes, the commission was significant. Almost 2 months' rent in one swipe. But it was more than that. It was the pattern. For 3 years, I had put in the work. I arrived early, I stayed late, I memorized collections down to the setting technique. And every time I got close to being seen, Diane stepped in and dimmed the light. I'd made peace with it too many times. I told myself it wasn't worth the conflict, that keeping the job was more important than speaking out. But something shifted that afternoon. Maybe it was the way the older woman, Mrs. Porter, I later learned, had looked at me. Like I mattered. Like she saw me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of my tiny Bronx apartment, replaying every moment. I remembered the first time it happened, when I helped a young couple custom design their engagement set. Diane had been on lunch. The couple even wrote my name on a thank you card. But the sale was logged under hers. Then the businesswoman from Tokyo. Her translator and I had bonded while waiting for sizing options. She even asked for me by name. Diane processed the order on my behalf because I was with another client. Each time, she made it seem like protocol or coincidence. But I wasn't imagining it anymore. It was theft, disguised as teamwork. The next morning, I came in early, earlier than usual. I brought a notebook, plain black leather, and sat at my locker writing down every incident I could remember. Date, customer name, details of the interaction, how the sale was reassigned, any witnesses. By the time my shift began, I had filled 6 pages, but I knew I needed more than my memory. I needed proof. That day was tense. Diane strutted in at 10:45, smiling wider than usual, carrying a coffee from her favorite French bakery. "Great energy yesterday, team," she said, spinning toward me. "Arya, our client, left a glowing review about her experience." "Well done." I blinked. "Thank you." "Corporate's taking note," she added, like she was dangling a treat for a dog. "We'll share the success together." There it was. The keyword. Together. What she meant was, you work, I win. I nodded politely, but inside, I made a silent promise. This was the last time. Around lunchtime, I excused myself to make a quick call. I stepped out behind the store near the loading dock, where the city noise drowned out eavesdroppers. I called Ava Donnelly, a previous client I remembered well. She was a lawyer, sharp, assertive, and kind. I'd helped her find a retirement gift for her mother last year. "Arya," she said, surprised. "Hey, it's been a while." "I hope this isn't a bad time," I said, keeping my voice low. "But I wanted to ask you something a little unusual." I explained the situation. Not all of it. Just enough to let her know that I believed her sale had been misattributed and that it was part of a larger pattern. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Honestly, I thought it was weird at the time. I remember working with you all afternoon, but the email receipt had someone else's name on it. Diane, I think?" "That's right." "I assumed you worked under her or something." "I don't," she sighed. "Do you want me to put something in writing?" "If you're willing." "I'll do better. I have emails from our sizing exchange, all addressed to you. I'll forward them today." When I hung up, I leaned against the brick wall and closed my eyes for a moment. One name, one voice, one piece of real evidence. And it gave me the courage to go further. By the end of the week, I had 3 clients willing to submit emails, receipts, and even voice memos confirming they worked with me, but saw Diane's name on their paperwork. Each of them had brushed it off as admin error. But now, with a pattern laid bare, it looked exactly like what it was: credit laundering. The final straw came the next Thursday. Diane had just returned from a long lunch again. Hair perfect, attitude sharper than usual. She pulled me aside, her hand brushing my shoulder in that fake mentor way she did when she was about to put you down softly. "Arya, quick note. You'll be off the weekend floor schedule. New hires need shadow time and the weekend clientele is too fast-paced right now." Translation: "You're getting in the way of my numbers." I smiled sweetly. "Actually, Diane, I'd like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Keene, today, if possible." She blinked, caught off guard. "About what?" "I have some documentation he might find useful." Her eyes narrowed just slightly, but she couldn't stop me, not without making it worse. I turned on my heel, walked to the front office, and asked the receptionist to pencil me in for the final appointment of the day. That afternoon, I stood outside Mr. Keene's office, holding my little black notebook, a manila folder of screenshots, and 3 signed client statements in my trembling hands. Whatever happened next, whether I got fired, blacklisted, or finally promoted, I wasn't letting this go unseen. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth. And I was done being quiet. Mr. Leonard Keene's office was nothing like the rest of Evray Lux. While the showroom sparkled with glass and gold, his corner office was quiet, minimalist. Clean oak desk, a leather chair with barely a crease, no awards on the wall, just a large framed photograph of a glacier lake in Iceland. It was calming, but right now it felt like the edge of a cliff. "Come in, Arya," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. He was in his mid-60s, with silver hair, a soft voice, and eyes that missed nothing. I sat, careful to keep my voice steady. "Thank you for seeing me." He gave a small smile. "Your request was unexpected, but I respect initiative. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath and opened the folder on my lap. "I'd like to report an ongoing issue involving credit misattribution and sales interference. I believe my direct supervisor, Diane Russo, has consistently overridden my commissions and reassigned client purchases under her name." He didn't react. No flinch, no raised brow. Just a slow nod. "I've documented 6 instances over the past year," I continued, sliding the printed emails across his desk. "Here are 3 written statements from clients who worked with me personally, but whose receipts show Diane's name. You'll also see screenshots of internal logs, timestamps, and the staff schedule, showing I was the only associate present during those interactions." He flipped through the papers, one hand to his chin. "I also have a voice memo from a client, Ava Donnelly, confirming the discrepancy." He looked up. "Did you bring it?" I tapped my phone. "Yes, sir." He waved a hand. Go ahead. I hit play. Ava's voice filled the room. I remember working with Arya the whole time. I even emailed her about a ring adjustment. I was surprised when the receipt had someone else's name. Honestly, I thought it was shady, but I didn't know how these stores work. I just assumed it was some policy. When it ended, the silence lingered. Mr. Keene leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. That's thorough. Thank you, I said quietly. I've kept quiet about this for years. I didn't want to make waves, but after the incident with Mrs. Porter last week, I couldn't ignore it anymore. He paused. Genevieve Porter? Yes. She made a large purchase, and I was the only associate who worked with her from start to finish. Diane inserted herself just before checkout and claimed the sale. That finally got a reaction. Mr. Keene sat forward. Did you say Genevieve Porter? Yes. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thin manila envelope. From it, he removed a handwritten note on thick cream-colored stationery. His eyes scanned it quickly before sliding it across the desk to me. It read, "To whom it may concern. On my recent visit to your flagship store, I was assisted by a young woman named Arya Torres. Her professionalism, kindness, and attention to detail were exceptional. I observed a troubling dynamic in your sales floor, one where talent appears overshadowed by hierarchy. I suggest reviewing internal culture before it costs you the very people who elevate your brand. Genevieve A. Porter." My heart caught in my throat. She wrote this? He nodded. She sent it to corporate. Didn't mention specifics, but this clarifies things. I was already planning to follow up. He tapped the folder I'd brought. Now I don't have to dig far. My hands trembled slightly. What happens now? We'll be launching an internal review effective immediately, he said. Diane will be placed on leave while we investigate. In the meantime, I'm recommending you for interim floor supervisor. I stared at him. Wait. What? You've done the work. You've done it under pressure. And you've done it with integrity. He folded his hands again. Consider this a test run. If all checks out, we may remove the interim altogether. The breath I had been holding released all at once. You'll receive formal notice in writing tomorrow, he added. HR will also request your client notes and internal messaging logs. Stay professional. Let us handle the fallout. I nodded. Yes, sir. Thank you. As I left his office, the hallway seemed quieter, the lights brighter. For the first time in a long while, I felt taller. Not because of the title, but because I had stood up for myself and refused to be erased. But the day wasn't done. At 4:17 p.m., Diane cornered me by the back hallway near the employee lounge. Her smile was brittle. Heard you had a little chat with Mr. Keene. I met her gaze. Yes. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Do you know what kind of mistake you just made? No, I said calmly, but I documented everything. Just in case. Her eyes flickered. I stepped past her without another word. That night, on the subway ride home, I scrolled through the photos I had taken of the customer thank you cards over the years. So many names, so many faces I had helped with care, never chasing the numbers, just the connection. Diane could fake charm. She could manipulate a spreadsheet, but she couldn't replicate sincerity. Not the kind that lasted past the sale. Mrs. Porter had seen it. And now, so had the company. Friday morning came with a strange kind of quiet. The usual clicking of Diane's heels down the marble floor was absent. Her office door, normally wide open with performative energy, was shut tight, the glass blinds pulled down. By 10 a.m., whispers began swirling like smoke across the showroom. She's not here for the morning meeting? She's never late. Did she get fired? I kept my head down and my focus sharp, restocking our new emerald-cut displays and quietly assisting a young couple looking at engagement bands. Every so often, I'd catch glances from the others, some puzzled, some supportive. A few of the newer associates even smiled at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time: respect. By noon, the official word arrived. Diane had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The email was brief, professional, clinical. Just like everything else in corporate retail. The shift supervisor, a kind woman named Marlene, came over during lunch and gave me a discreet thumbs up. "About time," she whispered. But victory didn't feel loud. It felt like quiet relief, like letting out a breath I'd been holding for 3 years. And yet, I knew this wasn't the end. Just the start of a long overdue reckoning. After my break, I returned to the floor to find something unexpected. Mrs. Porter. This time she was dressed in a tailored navy coat with a matching hat and gloves, looking every bit the New York elite she had quietly hidden the week before. A younger woman stood beside her, carrying a leather folio and tapping away at a tablet. Her assistant, I assumed. "Good afternoon, Miss Torres," Mrs. Porter said with a warm smile. I hurried over. "Mrs. Porter, what a lovely surprise." She clasped my hand gently. I had a feeling I'd be back sooner than expected. I led her once again to the private viewing table, offering tea just like last time. She accepted, and as I turned to fetch it, her assistant spoke up. "I'd like to speak with your floor manager, please." I hesitated. At the moment, there is no acting manager available on the floor. The assistant tilted her head. "Actually, there is." I frowned. Mrs. Porter interrupted, smiling. "She's speaking to you, Aria." The room paused around me. "I'm not officially the manager," I said, flustered. "Just interim support." Mrs. Porter chuckled. "Well, let's just say I've made a few calls to ensure that won't be interim for long." My heart raced. What?" "I didn't tell you the full story last time," she said, sipping her tea. "I'm not just a loyal customer, I'm a shareholder. My late husband was one of the original partners when Everlux was founded. I stayed silent for years. Until last week, when I watched someone with real talent and decency be dismissed in plain sight." She reached into her bag and handed me a cream-colored envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "You remind me of who this company was meant to serve and who it was meant to elevate. Don't let their shadows shrink your light. I've spoken to the board. Let's see what happens next." I was stunned. No words came, just the faint buzz of adrenaline and disbelief. Mrs. Porter set her teacup down and smiled. "I came to make a new order today, actually. For my granddaughter's engagement, and I only trust you with it." I nodded slowly. "It would be my honor." She leaned in. "And Aria? This time, don't let anyone take it from you." The rest of the shift passed in a blur. I processed the order with Mrs. Porter personally. No interruptions, no override. When the receipt printed, my name was exactly where it should be. That evening, I walked home instead of taking the subway. The wind had a bite to it, but I didn't mind. I stopped at a little cafe and bought myself a slice of pistachio cake I'd been eyeing for months but never indulged in. As I sat by the window watching the city blur past, I opened my notebook again. I flipped to the last page. "Enough is enough," I had written the night before I met with Mr. Keene. Below it, I now added, "Justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's handwritten. Sometimes it walks in wearing a coat from last season and changes your life." The following Monday, I arrived to find an envelope waiting for me in the staff lounge. My name was printed neatly on the front. Inside, a formal letter from corporate. The header read, "Promotion Recommendation, Floor Supervisor, Everlux, Flagship Store." I stood there, still in my coat, reading the words over twice. My hands didn't shake this time. My throat didn't tighten. Because for the first time since I joined Everlux, something that should have happened did. The letter made it clear This was still a transitional period. The board had yet to make final decisions, and the HR investigation into Diane's conduct was ongoing. But the language was strong. In light of recent events and performance evaluations, we are placing you in the role of acting floor supervisor with full operational authority. Permanent status to be reviewed after 60 days. Marlene clapped when I showed her. She'd worked here for 8 years. They finally saw what the rest of us knew, she whispered. I nodded, quietly stunned. It only took almost losing everything. She smiled gently. But you didn't. That's what matters. That same afternoon, a corporate representative named Michael Ty flew in from headquarters for a formal HR interview. He was crisp, polite, and to the point. We sat in the manager's office, Diane's former lair. I kept catching my reflection in the glass display case behind the desk. Not to check my appearance, but to remind myself I was still here. Michael pressed record on a discreet audio device. Aria, I'll need you to walk me through everything again, from the earliest incidents to the most recent, including the situation with Mrs. Porter's order. I nodded and pulled out my notebook, now neatly tabbed with color-coded flags. I laid it on the desk and began. I detailed every customer name, date, the commission reroutes, the gaslighting tactics, and the silent retaliation. I handed over digital backups of client messages, emails, and even internal chat logs showing me initiating orders, only for Diane's ID to appear on the final file. Michael took it all in quietly, asking clarifying questions without judgment. Every so often, he'd glance at me like he was seeing something different from the paper in front of him. By the end, he pressed stop on the recorder and gave a slow nod. Very few employees come this prepared, he said, especially when dealing with someone in a position of authority. I had no choice, I said. She was rewriting the story. He closed his folder. We'll be reviewing Diane's history across stores. If this happened here, it likely wasn't isolated. Your cooperation has been invaluable. He stood to leave, then paused. By the way, the board's already seen your letter from Mrs. Porter. I blinked. Really? He gave a small smile. She may be discreet in public, but behind the scenes, she doesn't waste time. 2 days later, I was officially added to the management group chat. My login credentials updated, my email signature changed, and the staff began deferring to me with new language. Aria, should we update the display rotation? Aria, a VIP client requested your availability. Aria, when's the next floor training? The weight of authority sat lightly on me, not because I didn't take it seriously, but because I didn't need to posture. I had earned it, day by quiet day. That Friday, I received another surprise. A floral arrangement was delivered to the store, a bouquet of white lilies, yellow tulips, and Dusty Miller wrapped in silk ribbon. The card simply read, "The roots they tried to bury you in turned out to be wings. Genevieve." I kept the flowers on my new desk, beside a framed photo of my mother and me from my high school graduation. My mom had worked 2 jobs to get me through college. She never had the chance to climb a corporate ladder, but she always told me, the ground you stand on has to be yours first. Then you can climb. That day, I stayed late after closing. Not to catch up on paperwork, not to impress anyone, but just to breathe. To sit in the empty showroom and let the quiet mean peace, instead of pressure. I walked along the display cases, pausing at each one. Not to inspect the diamonds, but to remember all the women who had walked in with stories behind their eyes: mourning, celebration, inheritance, divorce, reinvention. It wasn't about the jewelry. It never had been. It was about what we build after the betrayal. After they try to strip us of our place and say we don't belong. And for the first time since joining Every Lux, I finally felt like the company matched the elegance it sold. Not because of the lights or the velvet, but because a woman in second-hand shoes saw me and helped me claim what was already mine. 2 weeks later, the news became official. Diane Russo was terminated from Evre Lux. The internal audit revealed she'd not only reassigned sales from multiple associates, but had also pressured junior staff to stay silent by threatening their scheduling and evaluations. At least 4 other employees came forward after I did. Most had felt alone, until my report gave them language for their own experiences. There was no public announcement, no parade, no company-wide email. Just a quiet change in leadership and a line added to the HR system. But I didn't need fireworks. The silence itself was confirmation. She was gone. The following Sunday, I was invited to a private dinner hosted by the board at a discreet fine dining restaurant in Midtown. I almost said no. But when I arrived, nervous, in a borrowed black dress and shoes, one size too tight, I was surprised by who else was there. Genevieve Porter. She was seated at the head of the long candlelit table, dressed in a navy velvet suit with delicate pearls at her neck. She stood when she saw me. "Miss Torres," she said, arms open. "Welcome." I hugged her, awkward at first but genuine. She smiled knowingly. "This evening isn't about the brand," she said, gesturing to the others. "It's about remembering what we stand for." The other guests included 2 board members, the head of HR, and an older man who turned out to be one of the original co-founders, now retired. "We rarely invite staff into these dinners," one of them told me, but Genevieve insisted. As we sat, they asked about my journey, my upbringing in the Bronx, my college years working retail while studying at night, and why I stayed at Evre Lux despite everything. I told them the truth. I stayed because I believed what we sold meant something to people, I said. But I almost left because the people selling it didn't believe in me. There was a pause. Then Genevieve said, "And yet, you believed in them. That's the kind of leadership we need." I blinked back a wave of emotion. After dessert, she handed me a small box. "Not a bribe," she joked. "A gesture." Inside was a simple necklace, a single emerald-cut diamond, no frills, on a delicate chain. It wasn't just beautiful, it was symbolic. "I chose this," she said, "because it reminds me of you. Not loud, not excessive, just undeniable." The next morning, I wore the necklace to work, and from that day on, I wore it every day, not for vanity, but as a quiet reminder. They tried to dim my light, but I polished it myself. Under my leadership, the store changed in ways you wouldn't see on paper. The staff rotation became fair. Commissions were transparent. We created a mentorship system for new hires, and this time, it was real. I saw junior associates flourish. Customers returned asking for us by name, not for flash, but for care. One afternoon, I noticed a young woman helping a customer who looked out of place. Worn coat, quiet demeanor. The rest of the team was busy, but this girl sat beside the woman, listening carefully as if she had all the time in the world. I smiled. She reminded me of me. And I realized something. The legacy we leave isn't in our title. It's in the way we treat people before they're seen as important. 1 month later, I was asked to speak at the company's annual leadership event. I titled my talk, "Polished in Silence, Reclaiming What They Tried to Take." I told my story, every sharp edge of it. And when I finished, the applause wasn't polite. It was earned. Afterward, a woman in her mid-40s came up to me. She wore a blazer, carried a notepad, and had tired eyes. "I didn't know someone else had lived what I just went through," she said quietly. "Thank you for giving the rest of us a map out." I nodded. Because sometimes that's all someone needs. Proof that you got out, and rose higher. Later that night, I sat in my quiet apartment, now with a view of the East River. I poured a glass of red wine and opened the monthly report from a new client in Chicago. I wore my diamond necklace, light catching in its edges. I thought about Diane, how she tried to steal the work I had built, how she poured poison into my career, and how I turned it into proof. I didn't yell. I documented. I didn't break. I became the person they couldn't ignore anymore. Above my desk now hangs a framed quote in gold letters. They handed me poison, and I made it proof. Every client who walks in sees it. Every woman who reads it knows.